Sustainability is not just a one-person thing. Like right here, if you look behind us, this is a sustainable permaculture farm in the middle of conventional farming, in the middle of Australia or somewhere. And it just shows you the difference, life and amazingness in the middle of devastation. It's so super interesting that you can have a place like this, which is like perfectly sustainable for yourself and for your family and everything. But if it's in the middle of this, and there's all the monkeys like we're having like a major population of young monkeys, and we had a lot of people feeding the monkeys because we had quite a prosperous community and there's always food because of that. But now that a lot of people are pulling out, those monkeys are starting to like really go crazy. I've seen quite a lot of monkeys dead on the street, being run over, and marauding. Wherever I go, there's large bands of monkeys. So you can imagine like how well would this do with monkeys marauding all day. But then it's not just monkeys, it's all animals. Can you imagine you in the middle of Africa and all of the wild animals that are left are roaming around outside, elephant and everything? How long will this last? And the one key to that sustainability is if you have a look at trees, trees are long term, they feed you over a long period of time. But if somebody comes in and marauds and eats all of your vegetable patch, and if it's not monkeys, then your trees will continuously supply you with, well, I mean, not seasonally supply you with food. Trees and hedges and all that sort of thing are ways in which to protect yourself and also provide food. And humans marauding through, they'll come in, they'll kill your animals, they'll take all of your food, but then they move on, and then the trees keep on producing. So do you have trees? Do you have seeds stored? All of those things. So it's the reason why I put this in the background. You see, because right now we're going to be looking at the keys to sustainability again, but there's different factors which are so important. And I looked at it the first time, and I was going to do different keys all the way down, and then eventually get down to the place where we hit permaculture, and I'm like, oh, why don't we just look at permaculture? And I put that up as a proposal, and everyone was like, run, and nobody attended. So I'm like, okay, well, we can skip the permaculture. We've got 2 minutes to go, and Curt doesn't seem to have arrived. He usually sends a message. Let me just have a look and see if anyone sent a message. Usually comes in right at the last minute. Anyway, there he is. He's coming in now. Might be wise to tell him what I just told you in brief. How's it going, Curt?
You say, Dennis?
No, good, man. You?
I'm pretty good. Slept in late this morning.
Oh, yeah? It's all good.
Yeah.
So, just to give you some idea of like my thought processes while you get yourself ready, Curt,
Uh,
can you see my what
yeah,
happened?
you look pretty good. It's a nice background. Do I
Yeah,
see a sustainability yard in the lower corner there?
yeah, that's
Uh,
an example sort of from, I don't know, maybe they had a drone or something of a sustainable permaculture sort of permaculture home and homestead or whatever. But it's right in the middle of normal unsustainable farming practices. You can see the background of like almost
yep.
desertification type effect. And so the reason for putting that is like I'm talking about the keys to sustainability, the why, what, when, where, how, and we started going through it, and I put down a whole lot of points, and then I started with like the most graphic reason why we should change. But I was just talking to Alex and Brendan about this whole concept here. It's like how long will this last if nobody else is being fed around you? If the monkeys, the wild animals, and all of the humans and whatever now have to leave the cities and go and look for a place to feed themselves and sustain their lives, how
Uh-huh.
long will this last? It'll be like all of the animals will be slaughtered and killed and stolen and or taken. I don't like the word stolen. Stolen refers to like a property possession idea, but the perennials are like these bigger trees and everything. They will fruit over a longer period of time and at various periods of time. So, they might come through and maraud, and now there's nothing left, so they move on. And then the trees will be what could sustain you through the recovery stage. And then of course you need seeds, and you need ideally food storage underground, or hidden storage of seeds and so on, so
Uh-huh.
that at first glance it's not available, but it's available to you to sustain your lives after that. And then water as well. It's like rain falls later, and it's like, so you've got water, which is they might drink all your water today, but if it rains within a reasonable period of time, you'll have water. And maybe you should have water storage underground as well. I don't know, just ideas. That's like what permaculture is about. It's permanent culture. It's about creating sustainable systems to ensure that life goes on. Do you have a camera, Kurt, or not?
Yeah, no, I haven't turned it on yet. I'm just
Okay. Okay.
waiting for some background activity to stop.
Okay. Yeah. So the whole idea is, I'm going to go through like some sustainability principles, and then like there are two possibilities. It's like I wrote a section on like who we are. I've said it so many times, but without knowing who we are and what we are and what we're driving to become, we don't appreciate the importance of living in a sustainable world. That was one. And the other one was recently we've been having a lot of like really sort of big wake up calls in our area about, rioting and plundering and just devastation. And it's just a choice of what do you guys want me to do, the story one, or do you want me to do the like who are we, what are we, so it really is a choice. So because one will come before the other or after the other, it's either way.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. The story part is it a long section that you want to
No,
propose?
it's reasonably short, so it's pretty quick.
Well, then
So
hit
I'm
us
gonna
with that while we have attention,
okay.
and then we'll get engaged. Yeah, that's what I would suggest. Might tee it up a little bit.
Okay, so as we know, unsustainable civilizations, civilized pyramid scheme societies inevitably break down, and there will be a natural redistribution of wealth and power. We can call it people taking what they need, or theft, or robbery, or riots, looting, or revolution. And quite a few terms are pretty derogatory, but people will naturally try and sustain their lives, and they'll go and they'll take stuff, and there'll be a redistribution of wealth, whether you like it or not. So last night or last evening and this morning while I was walking my dog, I saw some really poor guys, like you can see by their dress, like their clothes are dirty, you know just everything around about them, they really like in the thick of it. So as I'm walking along, I'm like, oh my gosh, those guys have got empty bags on their back. Um, and then it's like, oh, they're walking away from a building site, and the one guy has a spade, and the other guy has a, um, a spirit level, and another
Mm.
guy has a hammer, and they're leaving the site. And I'm like, is this my place to confront these guys and say, hey, but, why are you taking tools off this site? And then there's another guy also is like rummaging through the site with his car parked there. He's like, I'm going to take what I can. And then it's sort of like a flash comes in my mind, and I think, oh my gosh, I have just been in the real world, which the bouncer at the karaoke said, you know, you know what it's like in the real world. And I'm like, yeah, but the real world is the world I'm in. But it's not, because out there in the streets, people are being stabbed and shot, and there's all sorts of chaos going on out there. And I mean, I was in the emergency trauma ward in Arcade Khan Hospital, and oh my gosh, so many guys shot and stabbed, and they've got these drainage bags, and I don't know whatever the technology is that they're walking around with, where they're sucking the blood out of their chests and everything, and like guys with their legs chopped off, and it's just carnage throughout this ward, which is far more extreme than you would find in a settled, civilized society. I mean, how many of those people would come into sort of an American hospital? Maybe a lot more as you get towards the ghettos when people are really poor. And it is purely a fight for survival. If I'd have confronted those guys, can you imagine? Go hit me with a hammer on the head, without even thinking, because that's the culture within their community. So that was the one. And then this morning I saw another two guys. Like, that was three guys, all right. And then I saw all four guys. And then this morning I saw two young guys, and I greeted them as they walked past me. Strong, young, but like really, really like sad clothes and empty bags on their back, and I'm like, these guys look like they're going to work, but then it's like the realization is today's a public holiday, and nobody's working on that building site today, and nobody's working today, and they're going like very, very sort of like they're heading somewhere, and then they disappear, and I'm like, whoa, where'd these guys go? And then I walk past, and they're standing at a gate of another building site, and like waiting for me to pass, and then of course more than likely jump over the fence and go and do their thing. But who are we to judge? It really, I mean, can we? And it's like, it's all very well to say, oh, those are my things, or they're owned by somebody or whatever. It's like, if you leave them lying around, people are going to take them. You can't afford to leave your gates and storerooms and everything open, because like somebody who's starving will do whatever they have to do to take what they want. If you leave the gates open, the monkeys will invade and take bananas and whatever out of your house, because we have that often. We've had to actually put up ways to prevent the monkeys from taking our stuff, and taking our food. If they can see it, they're going to get in, they're going to take it, so. Also, we've also recently experienced like a major revolt and looting and destruction of businesses, mainly in our area in KwaZulu-Natal, but mainly in cities. Experiencing total societal collapse was like a total wake-up call to us, a reminder how fragile this house of cards, built on lies and deception in our centralized cities are. It was like overnight, bam! The stores that we would go to in the malls were just smashed and looted, and just absolute devastation. ATMs, smashed, and money taken, and it was just like the fire had been lit in the have-nots, and they just went crazy. So that resulted in a lot of people actually with wealth and providers of jobs, actually just this mass exodus. They're heading to Cape Town, they're going to other places in the world, they're getting out of here, because as this process happens, it's going to accelerate. It's going to happen more and more often. And at what stage can you keep on sustaining this rebuilding to be plundered again? It's like you can't. So, and then there's a lot of judgment. It's like, oh, these people are bad and this, and it's like, oh my gosh, if they can't feed themselves and you don't give them jobs or means to feed themselves, like more than 50% with COVID and whatever of our population is starving and homeless, and they depend on the concept of a bantu, which is, if I get something, I share it with everyone else. You know, if they have, I mean, I was in the hospital, and I had a spare apple. I gave it to somebody who was hungry, and then the guys came in, and it was like he had just got, like, I don't know, six plums or whatever from his visitor, and immediately he came around and he's like, yeah, take, you know. It's like, oh my gosh, these people have hearts of gold, you know. It's like, that's how we survive, is together as one people, you know. If I've got extra, then let's share, you know. So a phenomenal realization. Anyway, so but then there's always a sinister big business wars and whatever, where they just send in people for like black ops, you know, like turn what would be a peaceful protest into an absolute riot, to, you know, create this us against them thing. And also, it's like there's like this one set of department stores that's been around for like forever. It's called Game, and bam, overnight they shut their doors and they're gone. You know, it's like at the when this riot happened. So was that big American business like putting in, you know, doing what they had to get rid of the competition? So many like people profiteer from this, and big banks profiteer from this, because it's like you got a business and all of a sudden you don't have a business. Now you have to get funding to get it going again, to make to keep yourself alive. So banks make money and the rebuilding, you know. So there's certain businesses that make a lot of money out of the collapse of things, and you find a lot of this sort of thing happening on farms, where they'll burn the neighbor's farm. The winds pick up and they haven't made their fire breaks, and bam, take out the competition in the sugarcane farming industry, and bam, so now all of a sudden this land's available and cheap, so buy it up. And there's a lot of centralization of wealth and power happening in that sort of thing. So you never know whether it is actually 90% driven by the people saying enough, or whether it's instigated, and it usually is instigated by power, you know, and propaganda and whatever, to get the people to that level of revolt. So, but eventually total societal collapse based on like major things like the food collapses, the loss of topsoil, energy, financial systems, any one of those major things, deforestation, the oceans, fisheries collapsing, ecosystems collapsing. What is the coming back from that? And like, now you have huge populations of people marauding. What is your chance of surviving that, even if you've got a sustainable eco-village? So it really is not just about you alone creating a sustainable eco-village. It's about you doing it and teaching others to spread that knowledge and wisdom, to spread the culture of sustainability across the world before it's too late. So that's ultimately my big task, is to create a teaching, or our big task, to create a teaching or educational system that changes the way of thinking and the way of living of everyone on the planet, ultimately, as soon as possible. So yeah, that's my story time.
Wow. That's, you call it a task. I don't know if that's the word for it. You know, it's a global basically transformation of the way we've been doing things into sustainability. And, I get it. I think we're here because we agree that the path that we're on is not the path that's going to lead us there. But to accomplish that is huge, if that's even a word that applies to it. There's so many aspects to what you said, including certainly the sociological aspect, which is the big one. We're seeing the looting and marauding that you were referring to happening in Ukraine right now. And it's, the Ukrainian people, as nice as they might be, and I'm not here to judge either side. Well, I am. And the wonderful fight that they're putting up to maintain whatever lifestyle they have. It would be nice that they overcame the Russian army and were able to maintain their autonomy as a nation for whatever period of time they can do that moving forward. And look at what it's taking from them and the toll on their environment, their cities, their culture, every aspect of civilization. And let's just use that word. Look at what the toll is taking on their civilization. And that's kind of what you and I and Help Save Our World is about. It's shifting civilization to sustainability, not just a few people. And it's such a huge conglomeration of influences and traditions and habits and wants and even unspoken desires. We've been infiltrated so much, and I don't know, infiltrated meaning to the ideal paradise that we had, assuming Adam and Eve didn't fight each other and get a divorce. Who knows where the thing started? So when we talk about Help Save Our World and what we've been doing the past couple of years, it does involve our ability to commit to understand, actually understand first, then maybe to commit to living a life that is sustainable and that influences others to be sustainable and gets them to commit to it as well. We know how fickle human beings are. And even though something looks good today, somebody comes along with an apple and a tree and says, here, try this. And, paradise is lost again. So to think about being able to cover the earth with a sustainability mindset and not only mindset, but actual implementation. It's a big, big thought. And to do it urgently before the critical mass of, climate change happens again. So my take on it is, as much as that would be our goal, we have to be okay with creating the small pockets that exist now, like the one behind you on the screen, right? And only by that will we be able to influence and enroll people in wanting to participate in that life. And still, you have nice cities and areas, where building and construction is going on, and you have these marauders going around stealing tools or whatever else they can. And we see it all the time. It's why we have police, and why civilizations and societies have done that. Say, we built something nice, now let's keep it. Part of the problem is we don't have control over the thought process, the overhead hidden agendas that end up influencing and affecting deeply what we're able to do in our little enclaves. And we're again on the macro level, we're seeing that with Russia and Ukraine, and the play out of all the other nations and who wants to do what and what are they afraid of. And as you know, we're subject to the leverage of huge and horrific weapons of mass destruction. And that's always dropped on us whenever we say, well, we should be defending this or protecting that. It's like, okay, and we can wipe you guys out totally, so you can never reclaim what it is that you're talking about. So maybe it's apropos that the war is happening right now in the Ukraine. And again, I guess it's a war. I mean, it's a takeover more than war. I guess that's what war is, just the fighting back and the defense, I guess. It's great that it's happening now at this time of potential famine and the global change and lack of water, lack of food, lack of safety, lack of energy to sustain throughout the particular seasons that we have. So it's a huge picture. I know I'm kind of ranting here or
it's all good.
Rolling on it. And we get to understand that macro activity while we're dealing with our little micro world and our micro lives. And as I think we've agreed, a lot of people just are not capable of doing that. They don't understand it. They don't want to understand it. They're too distracted to take the time to understand it. And that's that division is being leveraged by other powers that be that are much stronger and bigger and well financed and blah 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 than us, to keep their status quo. So huge question, and I think the age old, at least in my lifetime, maxim of think globally and act locally still is the way we have to go, and acting locally is still to change global. So I don't have, of course, the answer. I wish I did, but I know for my own self that's the best I can do. With me and my skills is to support and create the type of communities that are behind you, that said, in the midst of all this nonsense and destruction and raping of the planet, my enclave still exists. But then it becomes, well, can you protect your enclave from either destruction or theft or the influence of GMO particles floating into it? It's how do we survive and be able to keep the world that we see from those that don't agree with us and are willing to attack us in order to prove that they don't agree with us. So I'll just leave it there. Obviously, there's many, many questions and perspectives on this, Denis, and let's see what we can uncover.
Yeah, so, super interesting. There are environmentalists and people who are really out there, on the forefront of trying to make a difference. And then you get we go to the karaoke and it's at a bar and everything, and I talk to people, and there's this religious guy, and he's this is Armageddon, it's the end of the world and we're done and that's it, there's nothing we can do about it. And then there's guys who are not religious who are it's too late, Denis, forget about it, it's over,
Yeah.
And I don't accept that, and I will never accept that. It's the future of, how long did it take for life to get us to this place that we get to be standing here and holding the baton of life, and we're just going to let it just become extinct just because we don't want to try? It's no. If at just some stage somebody who's in a position of power, just the little switch clicks in his head, maybe something we say, and or if his family says, because they watched what we are saying, and they're oh my gosh, and click, and he has the power to transform a country or maybe many countries. Maybe it's somebody high up in US power, and they're oh my gosh, this is what we've got to do, and bam, before you know it, they make it law that everybody in the farming communities or whatever has to accept the establishment of these permaculture eco-villages. And literally overnight there could be a transformation, and the 14 years or whatever that we have left becomes a 14-year growth spurt of re-establishing life on the planet. and planting trees, and just like that thing you posted, and bam, everything changes. We have the potential, and if we've written the books, and permaculture's been written, you know what I mean, as a sustainable culture, but to me, there's so much more that needs to be taught and understood, and that is more of a personal, and like I talk about the natural wisdom and the intuitive understanding and knowledge of who we are really. We've been so separated from ourselves and from nature, and what we are and who we are, and those are like crucially important understandings, because like if you realize that you are one with this connected world and connected universe, and that you are of Mother Nature within Mother Nature, if you realize like all of these different things, and then only then it's like, oh my gosh, without this, sustainable culture, I'm dead, I'm gone. I've got cancer. Like there's a guy at the garage. He was like, he's one of our group, he's been on a few times, and I saw him at the garage yesterday, and he's like, oh, he's got cancer, and he's been going into hospital all the time, every so often to have surgery, and it's like, oh my gosh, And then I've been like doing a lot of studying of healing modalities and energy healing and all that sort of thing, and you put it all together, and it's like, oh my gosh, if you just knew what I know and what we know, and you wouldn't be in the situation you're in. And he's trying his best with what he knows and what he's being told by other people, but there are better ways, that are available if you're open to listen and learn, So,
As I say, that phrase right there, if you're open and willing and listen to listen and learn, I think that's the critical phrase right there as to how things move forward or not. Yeah.
I mean, that's really it. It's like, if you've defeated already and you've given up and there's no hope, well, there's no hope.
Yeah.
If you are not open-minded and, like, as you say, and like willing to, like, what can I really do? And are there solutions out there? And there are so many. One of the guys was saying, and it's basically what we've been saying, but it's like the further we get away from nature, the less our ability to sustain life and to survive. So
yeah.
This is really like the ultimate planetary call for realignment. It's like realign with the flow of Mother Nature, of life and sustainability on a global level, or we don't exist. We're extinct. We're done for. And in the process, your physical realignment with the flow of your life and your health and your sustainability. It's like when you reach the point of having cancer, you've been out of alignment for a long time, because it takes a long time for that to progressively germinate and become stronger and stronger, whatever, or proliferate to the point at which it's threatening your life. And there are ways of changing your diet and changing your biology and surviving. And it's also your intent as well, and the flow of energy and many other things. But diet is so important, and this deals with your diet, this sustainable, growing your own, whatever. And we've been doing that to the best of our ability. Some places we've been successful, some places total fails, But we're learning as we go. It's a journey. It's not something that you're like, oh, okay, I'm just going to go and create a da-da-da, and bam, everything works. Because, like, what did they do to this garden before we arrived here? Did they use weed killer and whatever?
Right.
And now that's beds, and now I'm battling to grow in the enclosed beds, but in my sort of separate from the earth beds, I'm doing a lot better. And then an area where nobody was growing, and I've established that, everything's taking off, you know. So there's a lot of uphill battles that we've created for ourselves by our unsustainable way of life.
Yeah.
Um, like you said, all of the herbicides and pesticides that are being sprayed on this land are, you know, are on this land, and now you've got to survive, get
Yeah.
those plants to grow. Yeah, that's pretty intense, you know.
Well, it's much like a war. A lot of the big farmers and big eggs are operating on a scorched earth basis. I'm going to destroy whatever it is and then take the next thing for me to do what I want to do. And in the process, maybe I'll create
So,
GMO foods where people have to get it from me only in my hot houses or wherever they're growing it. So, and look, I don't know whether that's the reality or not. I kind of feel it is based on
oh no,
looking at over the
there's a
past
lot.
20 years. Yeah.
There's a
So,
lot of growing a lot of food in like containers and in enclosed areas
yeah,
in cities, um, using just nutrients pumped through piping and whatever
well,
to feed
hydroponics and things. Yeah.
hydroponics and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah. So that, I mean, that's like a separation from nature to produce volume, but not necessarily the health and the nutrients
Sure.
and whatever that we need to sustain our lives, you know,
Yeah.
healthy lives.
Well,
So,
I have a good friend, it's out in California, Bay Area now, and she's selling these towers, these grow towers, basically. Maybe they're 6 or 8 feet tall, and they have these little pop out pockets that you can put in whatever product you want to grow. I say product, I mean she's growing organic food in a big plastic container, run by electricity and pumps in the corner of her house, or I mean, sometimes they can put them even outside. And she's very interested in organic eating and probably sustainability, but she's living in the Bay Area and there's no land available for anybody.
no
So
space.
the next step for her to stay as close to what she would like as possible.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's still, and she's a nature girl,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
she's accommodating as best she can nature back into her life. Given that it's still inside of a city and inside of a house in the city.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm not judging that. I mean, anything you're doing and heading in that direction, you're doing a good thing. It's
Yeah,
better than just depending on the guys who are doing the genetic engineering, herbicides, pesticides, neonicotinoids, and all of the devastation, the loss of topsoil and drainage
yeah.
of water, so the lack of groundwater and blah 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 blah. It's like it's insane, you know. So. Yeah, I mean, growing on rooftops, growing on side of buildings, hanging bags with soil in them or compost and worm castings and blah blah blah, all of the nutrients that make it healthy, but and then continually adding to them nutritious compost and soil and there's so many different ways of making sure the microbiology in those bags is good, because that really our lives like begin in the microbiology and the mycelium and the whatever in the soil, which releases the nutrients from the sands and the clays and whatever, all of the basic sort of sands or whatever, or soils of the earth, and then it's with that microbiology that your plants grow really well. So it's
Mm.
life, facilitating life from such a microscopic level all the way up, and if you don't get that right, and of course the
Yeah.
herbicides, pesticides and everything in these fields is literally killing that microbiology in the soil. So once everything's dead, it's dead, and it's
Huh?
desertified. It's crazy,
Well,
but
but science is finding plastic eating microbes to fix the plastic continent that's growing in the oceans. Yeah, it's throwing. I don't want to use the word. I'm trying to make a simile for throwing good money after bad, but it's kind of that thing. Let's throw more bad science on top of bad science that wasn't responsible to begin with.
And
Um,
then create an epic problem because now those microbes do, proliferate so exponentially
yeah,
that you kill the oceans anyway, or something stupid. It's like,
right. It's like we don't
but
see every angle. Yeah, yeah, and
yeah,
light will
it's like,
find its way out.
and it's like when everything is dead because we made one silly scientific um, oversight. Bam! It's like science and technology, often provide solutions, immediate solutions for problems, but
Yeah,
they ultimately don't solve the ultimate problem. It's like dealing with the symptoms and not with the cause. Deal with the symptoms, not
yeah.
with the cause. It's like, unless you deal with the cause, you're not going to fix anything. It's like this woman goes, like, I had a conversation with the other day, and she's like, oh, these people are terrible. I go to the beach and was picking up plastic bags, and then people sit down right next to me and throw their plastic bags on the floor. Now I go to the beach and I just sit there, and I don't care if I'm sitting on tin cans or whatever. I'm done. It's like these people are just despicable. And I'm
Right.
like, what? And of course, she wouldn't let me into the conversation, so I couldn't have a conversation with her. She had made up her mind. And I'm like, oh my gosh, so these people from Africa who are these like bad people, did they create plastic? Did they create the tin cans? Did they or do they own these businesses that are making like all of these products and packaging them, taking, I don't know, coconut out of a coconut and pouring it into a tin and then selling you a tin can of coconut water? And did they do that? Or did you do that? Or did your people, your society create that problem? And then market it like crazy to all of them because this is the best thing since sliced bread. And take away the land that they grew their coconuts and their whatever and blah, 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 blah on. And now blame them? Oh my gosh. Are you stupid? You know? It's like, it's a problem that your societal, capitalistic, monopolistic system created, and now it's their fault. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like, people.
Yeah.
And, and
Look, you and I right now are talking through a fairly advanced compared to who humans have been level of technology, right? And in this technology, we know that there's been slave labor and all kinds of raping and pillaging of resources around the world in order for you and I to be able to do this. And at some point, this damn Apple machine or whatever it is we're on is going to fail, and we're going to have to get rid of it, right? And do we know all the components of this and where they should go, or do we have any kind of real collective that says, give us your old technology and we'll recycle it in a way that's sustainable and blah, blah, blah. We don't. We may have some pockets of that tend towards that. We also know that as it went up the chain, the recycling stuff just got sold off to countries that were willing to allow it to be dumped in their ocean. They're not recycling it. They're not processing it like we down at the lower level think that was going on, because it got too expensive, or there was a disruption in the chain and they lost the workers. Who knows what it is? Maybe there's a political strife. So we all get to deal with this. It's our problem, regardless of whether they're throwing the bags away or they're putting the bags in a recycling can. It's still, we don't know what the end result is going to be, and many people stop early on in that process. I'm going to leave my garbage on the beach. Okay. I'm going to throw it into the garbage can on the corner. Well, that's a good start. Thank you. Did you write your local congressman and say, do we know where our recycling is going? I heard that it's just going into garbage trucks normally. They're mixing it back at the dump and letting it all go. So
Yeah.
for us to be able to impact all of those streams, and they are many, from the growing the food to the keeping the air to the, driving our automobile around or whatever to get to where we want to go and burning the fossil fuels, we're all still part of that system, regardless of how much or how little. And if we stand responsible for it all, yep, that's me. I caused those people to leave their garbage bags there. And if we look and track it back to how we could have impacted them, and it could be 10 degrees of separation that, well, if I had done this, then that would have happened, that would have happened, that would have happened. And maybe they would not have dropped the bag today. They would have gotten the concept of, taking care of your own property and being respectful, or whatever the word we want to use, of others and the ground that we share. So it's a grand question, Dennis. Again, I'm not making one conclusion on it. We are all responsible for everything that is occurring today on some level. Now, that's a big thought to get. It took me many, many years. And I still don't know that I have it. I think maybe intellectually I get that. Yeah, I've impacted everything around me on some level. Even before I was born, I had some impact on it. But certainly once we're manifest on this earth, we are creating damage for other people to clean up for us. And it's not like as a 2-year-old, okay, now that you're 2 and you understand language and you can walk and talk, go and clean up your brother's shit, because I got to teach you responsibility in here. That just doesn't happen. And we just don't get that stuff. And you know why? The existing pyramid schemes don't want that to happen. And so the whole field of responsibility and awareness and sustainability is muddled from the time we're infants. It probably doesn't even exist to us until we're so habituated to the comfort that the other stuff gives us that it's really hard to change our minds now. So, I know cars put out gas, so that's why I ride a motorcycle, or that's why I ride a bicycle. It happens to be a $1,200 bicycle that has certain aluminums or whatever. That it just goes on and on about where whatever choices we make impact our society and our environment on some level. And some of us live very simple lives, and even like you and I and the group on today, like we live lives in reclaiming the thought processes that have been domesticated out of us, I guess is the best way. So, human comfort is a big driver for decision making, even if it's against our best interests. I'd rather be comfortable in the U.S. than having to fight the Ukraine here. So yeah, I don't mind my taxes going to bombers, and I'd rather be able to get the food at the corner rather than have to make it myself. So yeah, I'll accept big ag taking control over the food supply, because at least I can get my food and do my job and raise my kids and have my house. And it's all overwhelming, I think, for us humans to be able to deal with the complexity of civilization that we live in right now in societies, which is why the reconnection with indigenous peoples around the world and the whole indigenous movement is important for us, because a lot of them do live on that level of what I just did caused this to happen. And I realized that that's how it works. Again, not all indigenous people live that way anymore either. And those that do, we end up trying to overtake, whether it's their land or domesticate them into some religion or whatever it might be. So it's our continuing process as human beings and the civilizations that exist on Earth right now to figure out how to deal with that and how to live with that. And I think what we're doing here is our way, our small way of looking to rein it back in and get some more collaborators to shift the direction. And as we know, the direction is extremely powerful.
Yeah. but powerful, but a house of cards. It can topple just
Ah,
because it really is built on lies and deception and uh, and it is a house of cards, and nobody realizes just it takes just one of those tipping points, just one of them, that we've gone beyond and reached the point where there's no coming back.
huh?
And like all of a sudden we run out of fossil fuels. All of those wars to sustain the power and to expand the power, they stop. They can't run those tanks.
Yeah.
Bam. And all of a sudden the world has to change. There's not, or a loss of confidence in the belief in money. That's just that.
Uh-huh.
All of
Uh-huh.
a sudden, nobody trusts anybody's money. The whole society and everything just comes to a standstill immediately. And then what do? You can't stay in a city. You've got to run. You've got to get out of the city. You've got to get to where you can grow food. And what does that create? Bam. Huge devastation and marauding and whatever. But
Yeah.
that might be seen as a bad thing, but in actual fact it's a good thing because, you know, people who are now on the land picking fruit and eating and peeing and pooping on the land, all of a sudden they are nurturing the microorganisms in the soil and providing a potential future. You know, it's like we're holding on to the most destructive psychological disease that's ever affected mankind.
Mm.
And it's inculcated into our religions and into our education system and every other corporation and everything that people are trying to hold on to now. All right.
Yeah.
It is the essence of the disease is the way humans think. And how do you change that? Well, you change that by creating a new education system, a set of books that teaches us who we are, what we are, where we come from, like all of these things which are the essential premises for life on earth, the natural wisdom, that everything that I'm like trying to go through now as like the fundamental sustainability principles. All right, it's like, oh my gosh, this is what we need to know, because if we all were not taken out of nature and put into boxes into schoolrooms and told to sit still and now do your best and compete with the person next door to you, and you know, buy products, pens and pencils and books and whatever, get like buy this with the money that you make from the labor that your parents do, within a capitalistic system, consuming as much as they can and creating more and more products. um, and if you were just uh, educated back into nature, it's like, go play. Learn all about the trees and how to pick and how to plant and how to grow. Because I grew up like that. And not only did I grow up in the eco village, I was sent to King's in Nottingham Road, and we rode horses and we grew our own cabbages and created all of our own artistic creations. Like we had uh, potting wheels and also and kilns and all about how to live in in this world and create your own plates and whatever, you know, to the point of your own consumption, because you know making potting and all that sort of thing requires effort. So how much human effort do you have to create for maybe you and for your community? But you're not going to you know, put a motor on that and like start producing huge kilns that are mega factories. And it's like your local economy and your local sustainability is what you're capable of providing for, and it's kept at a human level. It's like when we go to the macro level, that's the mistake. You know,
Mm.
when there's a macro centralization of power, like in America and Russia and whatever, then these big boys are fighting about their power in their pyramid schemes. It's like that's not where it's at. It's about decentralizing and creating for your own needs. It's like simplification, reduction of consumerism, creating an education system where we teach like all about like the sun shines, plants grow, the microclimates, and we become observant of nature again because we are one with it. We are expressions of nature, and we're not living within nature. We're
Mm.
living in a totally detached, non-sustainable system in boxes, and we're hoping that nature's still going to be there to sustain us.
Yeah.
Nature's not going to be there. If you don't tend your garden, that's it, you're done. So the journey is that re-education system and the philosophy and the understanding of everything that goes behind it that's so critical. And that's really what this whole thing is that I've been writing and talking about. Um, but we didn't talk about it today. But we looked at it on more of a sort of a general discussion,
An
understanding,
overview. Yeah.
an overview, and it's like, I mean, I think that is critical. It's like for us to see the picture, for people to see that picture. Although we need the details, we also need to see the picture.
Yeah.
So that's awesome stuff.
Well, look at the picture though that's being presented to most people through the media, whether it be the movies, whether it be news, whether it be YouTube, whether it be TikTok, whatever it is. And some of these are become very democratic, and that everybody gets to say whatever they want to say, right? And people will pick what resonates with them. And we know that some of the most watched stuff is some of the most mindless, ridiculous, anti-human pap that comes out. But somebody has access to the technology and can promote it. Meanwhile, as those things are going on, we get these machinations of huge machinery invading other countries, and millions of people become refugees literally overnight. Their resources, their homes, their culture, their access to food, all of that. And that's what war is about, of course. And we're seeing it in real time right now in the most civilized part of the world, right? The edge of Europe. And still, there's no stopping the behind the scenes activity of those who would dominate and control. And we know that they exist, and they exist now with technology on uber levels of super. I don't want to say humanism because it's exactly the opposite of that. Super demonism. That might be a better aspect.
Yeah, no, it's like stupidity on steroids.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, certainly on the higher level, it's stupid. On the lower level, these are extremely crafty, manipulative people, as we see. And if it's not manipulation, it's domination, it's confrontation, it's total ignorance of anything that you represent as an individual. Um, so yeah, these are the forces that exist on the world, and we're all hoping for these super villains and Marvel wonders and all that kind of stuff to come and do the right thing.
Nobody's
Um,
going to save us. That's the point. It's like
yeah,
you think that in the Matrix that you're going to have, what was his name? The guy who comes and he's like the superhero and saves you. It's like, no,
right.
that's not what's going to save you. The only thing that can save you is Mother Nature. It's living sustainably. It's like if you don't do this and live as one with nature, there is no nature and you don't
Yeah,
exist.
yeah.
It's simple.
Well, and so look at the concept being promoted is the singularity, right? Well, that's okay because we're all going to be blended with machines pretty soon anyway, and our entities will survive without the human form and blah. We don't need this stuff. Just look at what's being promoted out there, Dennis. And these are competing ideologies for people's attention, and then for people's participation and contribution. Once that happens, at least in the Matrix, they're like, "You got, hey, I'm a energy source for this major machine." Um, the one you look, that's where slavery came from over the eons. It's certainly where machines kind of replaced the abuse of humans in that for quite a while. We're seeing fighter jets and cluster bombs and gas. I forget what's the word for that. And even the weaponization of viruses and things of that nature. What can we use to abuse is what it comes down to.
Yeah. I mean, technology has become the steroids of megalomaniacs,
Mm,
of really, it's like all of the things that are wrong about our world, technology has advanced them,
yeah,
to a point at which if I want to chop down 10,000 acres of trees, I can do it today, Bam, it's like 10,000 acres gone, it's like,
yeah.
really? So life doesn't stand a chance against the the misuse of energy and technology and so on. So, um,
Yeah,
so that's why I'm all for simplification and reduced consumption of
I get
things.
it. But
Yeah,
besides the machinery and the technology, we're addicted to the benefits of technology, right?
yeah.
So it's not even the technology that we're behind. It's just like, gee, I really like that, I can get food delivered to my front door. I don't have to go out. I don't have to deal with all this shit. I'm in my comfort zone. And thank you for that. Until the means of them being able to live in their comfort zone get pulled out from under them. Um, so yeah, it's such a twisted and ingrained, and it's like it's hard to separate. The tentacles of technology are everywhere in our lives. And look, even
But
in
it, sorry.
go ahead.
But it's so unreal. It's like that bouncer said to me, now you can see what's happening in the real world. It's like
Right.
the real world is people are fighting on the streets and stabbing and killing one another just for maybe a sweet or I don't, you refer to them as candy or whatever. I got there first, this is mine, and you like trying, or you stopping me in the streets, questioning me about the tools that I'm taking from this construction site, and it's like, you're dead. Boom, hit you on the
Right.
head. That's the real world. We've been taken out of the real world, out of nature, and we've been conditioned to exist in this abstract, technological, blah, blah, blah world, and we're not living in the real world. Have you tried to grow some food? Like, I mean, seriously, try to grow gardens? In the beginning, if you don't have any idea, it's tough
Yeah.
because of everything. Like the real world is the world we're going to have to live in.
Yeah.
Let's learn how to live in that real world. Um, we've done an hour, and I haven't like asked Alex if she wants to comment, or Brendan, or
I didn't even know they were on. I saw their name
Hi,
pop.
my name is Brendan.
Hey, Brendan.
hey Brendan, how's it going? So I'm sorry we just took off.
No, I think we would have commented if there was anything further to comment. I think you guys covered everything perfectly.
Yeah, no, that was a very good conversation, guys. I'm glad to be part of
Uh,
it.
well, thank you guys for continuing to show up and even just be listeners, because ultimately that's, at least for today, that's part of what we need. People need to show up and listen as well and contribute when they can. So good to see you. Brendan, anyway. Alex, hi.
She can turn it on. Yeah,
It's okay. I know what she looks like, and I see her smile already.
yeah. So yeah, it's yeah. I mean, just dealing with all of the stuff that's going on in our society and all of the challenges we've been facing has its psychological and physiological impact on us as well. So
Yeah,
Alex
I
has
think
been sort of
that's. I
suffering with
think that's. Go ahead.
she's been suffering with back problems, and I can imagine it's much more than just like childhood experiences and whatever. It's like it's dealing with like the threat of robbery because we've been robbed, and that's like psychologically has an impact on you, and then dealing with this like the destruction of the society around us. and transforming and changing and doing the stuff it's huge. When it comes to that time where you literally have no choice and you have to choose, it's insane. Like, somebody asked me to sing some karaoke song that I didn't know. It was the Irish song. And I went outside and I'm like, okay, I'm going to learn this song. And the anxiety and the stress of like, oh, it's my turn is coming up and I'm not ready. And just to be able to calm yourself, center yourself, keep your head and focus on what needs to be done. And I went through it as many times as I could before it was my turn to sing. And I sang it beautifully, and it was like, oh my gosh, only because I calmed myself down and I breathed and I relaxed and I focused on what needed to be done, and I did it. So that fear of competition or an exam, or you've got to learn to master that. You know, it's really important. Anyway, I'm talking. Anyway, any last words you want to say, and then yeah, we must go. It's like the hour.
Yeah, I don't want to be stressed because it's the next thing happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right, and as at least as far as that aspect of people being overwhelmed and people getting to be able to center and focus and create a foundation, and we know, I'm speaking for us on the call today, that everybody is different. Everybody deals with situations in life different, and as much as our physical form looks similar, what's going on inside is very different, and we react physically, mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually differently than each other. So to think that we're ever going to create, then maybe I wouldn't even want to create some kind of homogenized human being, a homogenized world. We have to accept that people are diverse and see things and experience things differently. So where we go from there, ultimately, that's always going to be an issue for us, is diversity that does exist, and how do we include it, accept it, or deny it? And if we start to deny it, then we're in where we're at now, which is us trying to control others rather than ourselves.
Cool.
The only thing I can say about what we've discussed today is I really, really do hope that people see the truth before they're forced to actually change. I mean, when we had the riots going on here in South Africa, we were forced to re-look at our lifestyles. We couldn't just get eggs from the shop. We couldn't just get our fruits and vegetables from the shop. We had to re-look at how we could get our basic foods and things like that. And that was one of the reasons why, we went about really getting stuck into the little garden that we had. Because, I mean, one of these days is going to come where we're not going to be able to walk to the shop and go and get the fruits and veg that we need to get. So I hope and pray one day that, the world wakes up before they're forced to, before the riots come, before the burnings of the buildings and the stealing of everyone's properties and, everything that they've got left, that they're able to make those choices, grow those foods, step away out of, I think change is coming. I think people are waking up to that view. I just hope it comes a bit faster.
Yeah, well, that wake up is their responsibility, right? To take ownership of what is. Yeah, and so they're living in a fog until that wake up call forces them to say, "Oh,
yeah."
Well, I hope so too.
It's not just a fog. It's like it's the comforts of their, their current living situations, and this is my stuff, and I will look after my stuff, and this is my grounds and my house. I mean, there are people out there that don't have, and if we were sharing, if we were giving, if we were being the people that I know we are all inside somewhere, we wouldn't have the kind of rioting and lack of jobs and things like that if we were a sharing, caring society.
Yep. Sharing is a big deal. Yep. I own it. It's mine. It's like, really? How many molecules will you leave this planet with when you die? Right?
Yeah.
Nothing. Even your body is not yours. You've accumulated it from the earth over however of your lifetime, right? So yeah, we have this idea of ownership and separation and everything else that still exists. And it's part of the human psyche, at least at this point.
Yeah, that's why we need to re-educate people
Yeah,
into realizing who we are and what we are, which is
exactly.
we can
And
make the subject for next week. But just one point, it's like when all of this happened, there was like a, a lagering of all of the people living in suburbs to like protect their suburbs and all that sort of thing, with guns and whatever they had. But for us immediately, we're like, oh my gosh, if these people who are marauding come through our property, and start to take whatever, where do we run to?
yeah,
How do we like sustain our lives? Do we run? Do we take? What do we take with us? A chopping knife, a tent, something to keep us warm. Like really, all of a sudden, driven to the reality of surviving without all of the comforts you have, living in the real world. And now, how do you feed yourself? How do you, look after your children? How
yeah,
do you defend yourself? What all of those basic fundamental questions all of a sudden are like reality. So that's extreme.
yeah,
And don't believe that you are safe and secure in your home just because you've got security guards. Those security guards are going to run for their lives when they see a whole crowd coming. There's no way they're fighting for you. So the reality is far worse than you possibly, or not worse, because ultimately that will create they're like, I don't own this property anymore, and the property belongs to everyone and anyone. So the whole societal ignorant or construct will be gone. So now all of a sudden it's like we need to grow our own food so we won't survive, and we need to gather our own water, and we need to, and then all of a sudden there will be this total um, decentralization of power. And then those guys who had the power and the control, who kept us in this weird and wonderful belief system and whatever, they'll be dead. So they'll be gone. So now all of a sudden it's up to us. Do we know how to get our hands in the dirt? Do we know how to plant? Do we know how to create compost and topsoil? And do we know how to do this? That's permaculture, and that's also what we teach. So
yeah.
yeah, crazy. Anyway, sorry, I can go on, and we can go on and on. I know it's like, and I'm so sad that Alex never got to tell her story, but she tends to be very efficient with words, and she's basically put her
Yeah, good. Well,
yeah.
I missed that there was a story from Alex. What was that? Was that mentioned
Oh
up?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like the trauma and the stress has resulted in back pains and everything. So
Uh,
she's now um, going through a recovery phase, which is taking a lot of effort. And
yeah.
um, I think a lot of these things like PTSD from all of these traumatic things that have been happening and our family's response to it, all of those things add together, and we store them in our hips and shoulders and whatever, and we need to go through meditation and yoga and stretching, and to be able to release all of these sort of tension
Yeah.
problems. You can't solve the problems. It's and you want to solve the problems, but you can't solve everything. So it becomes manifest in your physiology. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Another thing to learn and to to
Yeah.
be responsible to not let in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Huge.
she's an example of what she said. We need to change before we have to change, right? We need to learn before we have to learn. Um, and she's a living example of how if you don't do that, that's what happens. So at least she learned.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some people don't. All right,
Thanks.
pleasure, guys. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks very much. It was
Bye.
awesome meeting. Okay, go well.
Bye.
Bye,
Guys.
Brendan. Bye, Alex. Bye, Curt.
Happy spring, I think is today, isn't it?
Oh no, no, but we just went past
Your
St.
equinox?
Patrick's Day, and oh, so spring. So has your time changed?
Bye bye,
I
everyone.
think a week or two ago for us here.
Okay, so it's 6 hours and not 7.
It's 6 hours now, yeah. But I think
Okay.
today is the solstice, right? No, the equinox.
Oh wow, cool.
Anyway, happy equinox. The days are even today, right? Light and
Yeah.
dark somewhere in the world.
Awesome.
We made it up. It's just nature.
But that's like the cyclical connection to the real world. It's like in the real world this happens, and like how many people know that? Like really, I mean, like the majority of Americans, how many of them like even know that exists in the twilight zone that they live?
Yeah. Time to plant.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I'm going to press the button. So go well. Have a wonderful week. And if I don't see you through the week, I'll see you through the window on a Sunday. All right. Cheers.